Hi, my name is Priscilla Wathington. I am a Palestinian American poet and the author of Paper and Stick. I'm so honored to be included in this curation, so thank you so much. So as a little bit of context, I was born to a Palestinian mother and an American father, and I have lived between the US and Palestine, but I did spend a good chunk of my childhood in Jerusalem. Thinking about how I got started as a poet, I think it really began with music. When I was in high school, I took piano lessons. I loved to make up songs, make up the words to my songs. And so I think poetry began as this extension from that. If the music was sort of this pattern or these kinds of sound waves, then words were like the boat that could carry us across the sounds. Words in music, words against music. I think that's how it started for me. While I've been writing for a really long time, most of the poems I wrote were not collected into any kind of volume. So I got more serious about writing probably later on in my 30s. And the chapbook really came together much more recently, even though some of the poems in it had been written years before. But while I was working as the managing editor to Defense for Children International Palestine, if you're not familiar with that organization, it's an independent Palestinian-run human rights group focused on children's rights that is based in the West Bank. And they do a lot of work around the issue of Palestinian children under Israeli military arrest. So there was a lot of research into laws that I was doing, Israeli military laws, laws pertaining to Palestinian children who are detained in Jerusalem, which is like a special case, research on human rights laws and what was applicable, what argument we could make around that, and international humanitarian law as well. So I was really immersed in many, many different types of official documents. Sometimes we were investigating the strange circumstances around a child's extrajudicial killing. Sometimes we were looking into war crimes. There was a lot of investigation, which I think comes through in my writing. Not everything is known. Not everything is knowable. Within this kind of universe, I started putting together the chapbook that became Paper and Stick. My hope was to bring these different kinds of documents and official speech into conversation with each other. On the one hand, there is this sort of bureaucratic military paper empire, handing out permits and sort of stepping back and saying, there's nothing I can do, this is the process. And then on the other hand, there are these real people whose lives are being turned upside down in so many different ways. And I wanted to bring them into an encounter on the page. One of my favorite poems in this chapbook is called Interrogate the Breaks. It sticks out to me because it was one of the first poems where I had this aha moment, this sort of discovery that there was more there, that it wasn't a one-off poem, but rather a part of a strategy. I knew there was going to be more, a series. That poem has two voices in it. One of them is from a boy who had been arrested and held in solitary confinement by Israeli forces. And of course, I used that with permission. In thinking about just the process of finding a publisher and the many challenging political circumstances around that as a Palestinian writer who is specifically speaking, about very, very much fraught issues, I really didn't have too many problems because of the publishing house that I went with, which is Tram Editions. I had these really wonderful editors, including Glenn Shaheen and Elizabeth Hiscox. Glenn Shaheen is himself an Arab American and the president of RAWI, the Radius of Arab American Writers. And so in them I found a very supportive space to revise and to launch with this chapbook. So I really didn't have that kind of challenge of, arm wrestling with this industry giant about audience and about explaining. So I was very lucky in that way. While reading this book, I think that people can expect to be maybe a little bit disoriented, maybe a little bit unsure, sort of as this cover image suggests, things are disappearing or being disappeared. I try to keep a lot of doors open also and leave it up to the reader to decide how far down the rabbit hole they are willing to travel and what kind of discoveries they are open to making. So thank you again for this chance to be with you in some way on your shelf, and I hope that you enjoy the read.